Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the fifth episode of Reclaiming Happiness with Sandeep Neutron. These episodes belong to the Wellbeing Podcast season first. Without further delay, I want to go ahead and invite our guest member for today's episode. I've been meaning to have a female guest to talk and share her personal story, and so that we could learn and listen and learn from her own personal experiences. We have Wynoami Glasser joining in from United States of America, currently from the great state of Oklahoma. Joining in for the podcast. We've been having some difficulty connecting since I'm here in Nepal and she's out there. So without any further delay, let me have her in the podcast. Wynoami, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored and delighted to be here with you on the Wellbeing Podcast.
Absolutely, definitely. For just a little preview to our listeners, we've been trying to connect for past 10, 15, 20 minutes, and every time we do almost the first part of the recording, the connection drops. But I think nonetheless we are here. So let me begin by asking Wynoami if you could give a brief introduction from your point of view. It's been some time that we haven't met each other too. I know Wynoami from the time I've spent in New York City. I've known her as a really outspoken, great human being first. And I think she's a mother now. I had always felt that she, just like so many of us, she has experienced a lot of personal challenges, but she's that kind of person who is always positive and who is constantly learning. I believe you are also a life coach, Wynoami.
Yes.
Yeah. And so let's hear from you. What's going on? How is life? What are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that warm intro. Yes, it has been a minute. It's so wonderful to be reconnecting with you and also to share with your audience. And thank you so much for those kind words. It means a lot to me. Yeah, so what am I doing? Where have I been? Yes, it's true. I became a mother almost 4.5 years ago. And while I was living in New York. And, becoming a mother is like being reborn yourself. It's like a death and a rebirth for us women. We transitioned from being the maiden into the mother. And it's a harsh transition. And this modern world, because the modern world really does not support or respect mothers and children, is what I learned after I went through my 9 months of pregnancy and then into childbirthing, that the hospital system is not created to support mothers in doing what's naturally possible for our bodies to do. They treat pregnancy and childbirth like it's a disease.
Wow.
And then once the baby is born, here in America specifically, you're kind of left alone to your own devices. There's no one there to tell you what to do, to support you through it. And so many of us mothers, through our first journey into mothering with our first child, we have what has been described as postpartum depression, and which is something I experienced. But what I've learned now, having come out of that depression, is that the depression, it becomes what it is because the village and the circle of women has been disbanded. You know, what I've learned now is that many, many generations ago, women lived in circles inside of their communities with other women who were younger and older than them. And so there was always someone to learn from and someone to teach at all
Yeah.
times. And it took a community to raise every child and to keep the whole community, men included, safe, protected, and cared for. And when what we call the patriarchy set in, which is, you know, around the time Christ, you know, was born, somewhere around there was this this sort of movement by this dark energy force we're calling the patriarchy now, that took those communities apart, separated women, isolated them from one another. Because when women gather, we create tremendous energy. We can change worlds when we gather. When women gather, there's no stopping us. And that kind of power is intimidating. And at some point, they separated us from one another. They put us in our boxes. They told us that we had no power. They told us our voices didn't matter. And they kept doing that until we believed it.
Yeah.
You know, fast forward to the modern day, where women today struggle with confidence, self-worth. They struggle with believing in their value, believing that they have a place. And when you go through motherhood, that's really the greatest challenge, when you realize, like, the modern world expects us to be extraordinary mothers, raise intelligent, beautiful, well-behaved children, be extraordinary partners to our husbands and wives. They expect us to do everything and be everything without any support, to do it all by ourselves. So today I am feeling a lot better, and I'm feeling super inspired and charged to serve women, especially women who are mothers, in reclaiming their power, in understanding their value, and more importantly, inviting them to gather once again, creating opportunities for women to come together in circles, to create alchemy, to do magic together, to use our feminine energy to inspire, motivate, and heal these generational wounds.
Awesome, Wynoami. So after the birth of the child, daughter, what's her name again? I pronounced it wrong all the time.
Her name is Wyatt. Wyatt. Yeah. It's
Wyatt.
Traditionally a boy's name here in America, but my husband thought it would be a really great name for her, and I love it.
Awesome. Like, I pronounced it so wrong, and you know. So Wyatt, after her birth, and after you went through that episode of revelation, a sort of like, you know, like, to find out for yourself how hard it could be. What are the ways you came up with yourself? Did you, after the struggle period, did you yourself reach out to other friends of yours, or did you started reading and trying to find out more information, or what? How did you revive, and how did you, got across this situation?
Yeah. What happened for me was it was a double whammy, because I was going through this challenge, coming through this awareness of how forgotten women are, mothers are, and at the same time I was being a mother for the first time, and so it was incredibly isolating. And I really struggled for a while trying to find a community to plug into, because I don't know if you've ever experienced the tremendous overwhelm that comes with depression or sadness, where you feel the need to be with people, and yet the drive or the ability to actually put yourself out there and to be vulnerable is incredibly hard to do. It feels like you don't want to be seen when you're in that very dark space, and yet you desperately need people. I did have a few friends in the neighborhood where I lived that were mothers that I could kind of speak to, and they were definitely there with me. But what I ended up having to do was go through the pain. I wish I could say that it was that I was able to break through it easily, but it wasn't. It took 3 years. It took not 3. It took about 3 years, close to 3 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Going through that pain.
Yeah.
Going through that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and it was levels of pain. It started with the pain of isolation, and then it became the pain of feeling disempowered and angry and resentful of the situation and the way the world works. And then my husband and I could no longer survive in New York City. It was really important for me to stay home with my child.
Yep.
And I think most mothers feel this way, but the modern world isn't set up to allow for that unless you have a considerable income and you have, people that you can hire to support you. It's nearly impossible in the modern world now to have a parent stay at home, when you're making less than 6 figures as a family a year. But nevertheless, it was more important to me to be present for my child's most important years, these first 5 years of her life, than it was for us to stay in New York and try to make it work. So we had to leave. And that was another level of sadness for me. I hated leaving New York. I have so many beautiful friendships there, so many memories. I call it like my second adolescence. I went through my 20s in New York. I grew up there, basically. And it was really hard to move away. And then I had to come back to a place I never thought I would come back to, a community that really I felt like an alien in, like I didn't belong to. And so that brought on another layer of darkness and challenge. I ended up having to move back into my family's home, which, has so much baggage attached to it. Like I'm embarrassed to do it. I don't want to put a burden on my family. There's shame attached to it. So more layers of really difficult negative emotions and challenges to wade through. We got back here in 2017, so that really became that was the lowest point, but more like 2018 was the lowest point. And so I started to slowly climb out of that hole by just being just like accepting that this is where I am. It hurts. I do not like this situation. I'm in pain. I feel alone, isolated. What I did first to help myself out of that hole was find a therapist. I found a talk therapist who I could just sit in a space with, feel safe to just talk about the pain that I was going through. And once I was able to start doing that on a regular basis, it took about 6 months or so before I started to feel inspired again to reach out to old friends or to reread books that supported, my point of view, which is one that, life is here for growth. We're here to expand. And I started to feel more like I wanted that expansion, more like I wanted to get creative again. I'm an actor and an artist as well, a singer. I've been since I was 10 years old. So I started to reinvest in that just by watching more films and having more conversations with my artist friends. And slowly but surely I started coming back to myself. The biggest breakthrough I had was actually at the end of last year. Something just clicked. I guess it was just a matter of time. Once I just had the time to integrate and process what I had been going through. The biggest thing being that being back in my family's house, I was, back in relationship with my parents on a daily basis. And so all of these triggers started showing up. When you have a child, you start looking through your life through your child's eyes. You start having memory recalls of when you were a child, and they happen very randomly and surprisingly. And that started happening when I came back here, and I started seeing my mother as I was a child again. And these traumas, these pains, these hurts, these wounds that had incurred when I was a child started to reveal themselves to me. And so I had to address that. I had to start realizing that I had anger towards my mother. I had resentment towards her that I didn't know was there, that I had to let come out, had to talk about it with my therapist, had to address it, had to figure out why that anger was there. And what I discovered is, we all of us on some level incur this mother wound. And it's sort of the biggest subject of my work right now, in supporting people in healing that wound, because it is a generational trauma. But that was a big opening for me, and I was able to release the anger when I was able to identify what this wound was, and it freed me. And now I'm back in myself again, and the light is shining on me again, and I'm ready to serve other people in healing these same wounds.
Awesome. I'm so inspired already listening to you, Wynoami. I'm sure it has been really, really tough for you, and I really believe it also needs that personality, sometimes that strong personality, to be vulnerable, for you to make that steps. Not all of us could see the light at the end of the tunnel, but despite the difficult situations, despite the hardship, your the personality, that inner strength, I think would eventually lead to some form of understanding and some form of healing at the end. That said, let me switch it to slightly brighter tone of our conversation. I've been meaning to ask you this as well. Would you mind sharing with us some of your favorite, perhaps one of your favorite childhood memories? Now that I've also talked a little bit about your childhood, like any particular incident or particular lifestyle while you're a kid that you are fond of.
Yeah, I love this question. I really tried to search, I don't know if some of your listeners might relate. I have a terrible memory. I can't, don't ask me what I did yesterday, that kind of memory. But yes, so the thing that comes up for me when I think about my fondest childhood memory or memories is going to sound so cliche and mundane, but I remember a particular summer evening with my friends. It just was one of those evenings where all of our parents were out, on the front porch, kind of chatting with one another, and all of us were outside together as well. And it was sort of that feeling, when your parents are busy with each other, they're not paying any attention to you, and so you feel completely free to be yourself. And I just remember that night we ran around through each other's yards, catching fireflies, playing hide and seek, getting sweaty under the moon on a summer night. That's the one thing that keeps coming back. I just remember feeling free and so fun, and time didn't exist, it just could have kept going forever and ever and ever. I remember that. I also remember playing with my best friend in his house. He had just gotten these bean bags, and he set them up in front of the side of his bed, and we ran down the hallway into his room and just plopped ourselves on the bean bags to bounce our faces off the bed. It sounds so stupid. We just threw ourselves against the mattress to feel the rebound, and we died laughing, had so much fun. It felt again, time didn't exist and it was never going to end. And I just remember how fun it was, and we tried to recreate it the next day, and it just never was as fun ever again. It was just that brief moment.
Absolutely. This is the sort of dilemma I ponder usually, and I look back and see how did we lose that ability to feel good about ourselves? Is it because when we were a kid we were not really thinking too much? Did personal achievement, did our own ambition came in between, or the inner happiness we all so desperately crave for? These kind of questions I've always been in back of my mind. That said, what is your general opinion, Wynoami, about personal achievement? What to fulfill our ambitions, so on and forth, and its correlation with that sense of joy and inner happiness?
Yeah, it is such a good question, Sandeep. It is just like, it is the conundrum. It is the thing that I think about a lot too, especially now that I have a child of my own and I'm watching her grow. And it's so important to me to preserve her just zest for life. I just so much, I'm so invested in making sure that she thrives and that I get out of the way. Because we are born fully equipped. Like, there is nothing missing when we're born. The one thing that we need, right, is to learn how to live in these bodies, right? And that's what our parents and the people around us help us do. They keep our bodies safe while we grow into them. But who we are as beings is fully complete. And that truth somehow gets covered up, you're right, through childhood into adulthood. And you asked, why is that? And so my personal understanding of it right now is that it's conditioning. So when I was talking about the mother wound before, that's what that is included in conditioning. There's, at some point through time, someone somewhere decided that we all need to be the same, that we all need to pursue the same thing. Especially in this country, in America, you at some point, I think it's probably right when we go into school, that we're sort of taught, like, in order to be successful, you have to follow the rules, you have to stay in the lane that you're given, and you have to be realistic, practical, and your main interest should be gathering wealth and status, and that should create security for you and your family. And also, you should get married and have children. And for those of us who kind of don't have that model to fit into, it's really disruptive. And what it ends up doing is it trains us to ignore our intuition, to stop thinking for ourselves, and to start just, plugging ourselves into these molds. However, there is also a very real desire for many of us to achieve, right? To create something of our own, to make an impact. For me, my purpose is to serve. Like, I feel very strongly about speaking into individuals who recognize my gifts and talent, and speaking into them because I see their genius. My passion is to support other people in letting their genius come out, so that they can go do the thing that they're really meant to do, called to do. The difference I feel between achievement and happiness is achievement in the context of the modern world is external. It's about material achievement, material wealth or gain, status. Achievement is about the scores that you get, the way you look, the way others perceive you. Achievement can be about what you gather and gain as far as your home, your things, your experiences even. Happiness is something that exists at all times for you right here, right now. It's never something that you earn or work for. It's not something that you can collect or gather. And it's not something that can be taken from you either. It always exists, but only in this moment. It's not something that you can go, right, you can't say, like, I'm going to go try to be happy. It doesn't work that way. The way I've described it in the past is the have, do, be mentality is sort of the way the world kind of works up till now. I think things are changing now, but the paradigm up till this point has really been have, do, be. I've got to have my degree to go do this job to make this money, and then I'll be happy. But the reality is, it's be, do, have. Be happy. and then do the
Mm-hmm.
thing you feel led to do,
Yep.
and you'll have all the things, everything you desire. That your joy, your happiness exists in this moment. So if you can somehow practice appreciation, I think maybe through our youth we think, oh, I want, this relationship or this car or to live in this house to be happy, to feel like amazing. And desires are incredible. We love desires. We love wanting things. But then you get in a trap where you can never have enough. Nothing
Yep.
ever satisfies. And you drive yourself into a hole of desperation, anxiety, depression, competition, just all these really dark energies that steal your life force. And oftentimes when something really hard happens, whether it's you have a child, you lose a job, someone dies, whatever, you get sick, often when things are taken from you like that, where you can't just be in that modality anymore, that's when you start to take stock of what really matters. And
Mm-hmm.
you start to check in with, what are my values? What's actually important to me? Not based on what you've said or she said, but to me and what I care about. And when you get to that place, you start to realize, like, the stuff is just extra, it's bonus. What really matters is, for me, what really matters, number one, is that I remain in touch with my intuition, that I spend time in the spirit realm, that I really focus in on my inner peace, and I know what that is for me. And when I do that, I'm able to be open to the wonder of life. Every day, there's something magical and wonderful happening around me, and it's mundane. From anybody else looking in would see nothing. They would see nothing at all. But what I see is miracles daily, and that brings tremendous happiness.
Absolutely. For some of the first-time listeners listening to the podcast right now, the podcast, as you could tell, is called The Well-Being. So we talk, we try to share, talk, learn, and grow together aspects of well-being, inner happiness, and all the good stuffs. We started doing the podcast as a matter of fact, trying to catalog our own journey while we try to walk the talk. We thought, why not we share with our journey with the world, so that we all could perhaps benefit from. I don't personally remember anybody teaching me inner happiness. Never. Not in high school. Never. So I think this is such an important topic for so many of us, but also many a times underrated. And since it is so broad, we can't have an expert solve the problem for us. We all had to dig deeper and find it for ourselves, what ticks us, what makes us happy. In the last 4 episodes, in the first 2 episodes, I monologued some of my opinions, and then we had guest speaker from also the United States of America. We had Gus and Fabian joining in for the podcast. And today I'm really happy that Wynoami accepted my offer, and I've been having a blast, just learning so much, and really feeling that sense of connection, and seeing the world through her point of view, and especially as a mother. I think she has already shed so much light, which hasn't been talked as much, I think, in the society in this episode. Wynoami, what are you or what do you do nowadays in daily basis? I know you talk to the therapist. It really looked like your world changed upside down immediately after the birth of the kid, right?
Yes.
Of the daughter. So you're that has been one big challenge, and besides that, you already had the regular challenges, just like all the dudes have, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are a human being now, you're a mother, so you're already feeling literally two roles right there,
Yeah.
and so many roles, like as a wife, as a partner, as a member of society, as an artist yourself, you know. So it's sure is really overwhelming for you. That said, what are things you do on a daily basis nowadays, which has kept you sane, as you said, inspired, motivated? Any physical activity you do partake on? Can you share a little bit about that area?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, I think this is a really important conversation. It may come up as kind of like boring and rudimentary, but it is the foundation, okay, of your life. And I think when you're coming up in the world, you sort of just do what your parents do, and then you start doing what your friends do, and then eventually you start picking and choosing, realizing this works, this doesn't work. So what works for me is let's start from the very beginning. I wake up. I typically am woken up by my child, so I go straight into parent role. But I bring my child into my own practices. I think it's really important for parents to include their children in their daily rituals and the things that they do to support themselves. I say that because I'm a person who really cherishes my independence. I love being my own person. I like being alone. I'm not antisocial. I just really love being in my own energy and in my own space. And I realized at some point, like, oh, I can still include my child in this and get everything I need from my rituals, and also make time for myself. So just a side note out to any parents who feel like they love that alone time, bring your children in. It will bring a lot of joy to your life. So I include my daughter in my meditation practice, which I do most days. I'll either do a guided meditation from one of the many resources that are available. I love Deepak Chopra's meditations. I love the Calm app. And then often I'll just do a silent meditation. I'll do that for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Ideally, I love doing a long 45-minute meditation. I was doing that before, so I'm aiming to start doing that again very soon because I love that. I exercise at least 5 times a week, on average, most of the time 6. I mostly do cross training or HIIT exercise. I love to use the Center app for that, and on my low energy days or weeks, I turn to yoga, either yin yoga or vinyasa yang yoga. I think physical activity is imperative to mental health. If you're struggling, move your body, even if it's just walking. Yep. Moving your body every day is imperative. It's essential to well-being. And I love it so much. I do that. I eat a vegan diet, so I eat only plant-based foods. I do not eat dairy or meat. I made that change almost 4 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that as like a 180. I've always felt conflicted about eating animals. My whole life, I've eaten, the standard American diet for most of my life. But every time I would talk about it with somebody who was vegetarian, I would always think like, if I ever had to kill my own food, I couldn't do it. I would not be able to do it unless I was like absolutely starving and it was my only chance of survival. Even then I would suffer through it. I would say that all the time, and I would think like, but why do I eat this?
Why? Let me interrupt you there. Like, besides the morality factor, right? Like, so it's the same for me. Sometimes when I'm like, when I have to use my conscience, and when I'm really conscious, it really doesn't make sense that my diet comes through, practically somebody killing animals to feed me. We're not living on those times. Besides that factor, which is really, really powerful, do you think it has made a difference on how you feel. Besides psychological factor, in terms of body, you feel, is there a, because I've heard people saying, you need energy. Like, I'm a vegetarian. It's been 8 months. I'm a new one, but not like really strict. Like sometimes, like maybe one person is once in like few months. Sometimes I get this demands from my partner now, my wife, even my family members. Sometimes they're telling me, hey, Sandeep, you gotta eat meat because you're still young and you need a lot of energy. In terms of energy factor, what's your take on it? The plant-based diet and
I love this conversation because I'm passionate about plant-based diet. It has changed my life. First, I'll just, from my experience, the very first thing I noticed was a total transformation in my GI tract. I had so much. The experience I had before I went plant-based was, having an upset stomach or having an irritable GI tract was just normal. Like having bloat or just irritation, having cramps, intestinal cramps, just having an uneasy feeling in my guts was just a standard for me before I went plant-based. And when I went plant-based, it took 2 weeks, and all of a sudden my guts were silent. Zero issues with that. My mood lifted like a whole bunch. And this was during a time when I was still in postpartum depression phase. When I was pretty low energy, I noticed a tremendous lift. I could eat a huge plate of food and not feel stuffed or full or heavy. I felt light, energized, awake. My sleep got so much deeper. So those are the biggest like physical changes I noticed. As far as the conversation around meat, I mean, it's very well indoctrinated in cultures all over the world that meat is essential to a healthy diet. But when you look at the facts, and there are facts, this is based on studies. This is not an opinion. These are studies. The studies show that animal products are highly irritating to the system. They create tremendous amounts of inflammation. And even if you're eating meat that's from a quote-unquote clean source, meaning they don't pump it with antibiotics and medications, it still has in its flesh natural growth hormones from the animal itself, because you're eating an animal that has its own hormones in its blood, in its flesh. And so you're ingesting these hormones that your body cannot use, and they become like super growth. I don't mean to scare anybody, but they become like, they turn like bad cells. They make bad cells stronger. These growth hormones, they feed cancer cells, they feed cells that are diseased, because your body can't use it. The conversation around protein is really hilarious, because the animals that you eat plants. Cows, elephants, gorillas, like the biggest animals on the planet eat plants, and they are incredibly strong. Yes, some of them also eat bugs occasionally, but most of their diet is comprised of plants. So if it's good enough for the cow to eat the plants and they become as massive and strong as they do, then it's good enough for us. In fact, if your audience is curious, there are many documentaries out right now. The best one lately is called Game Changers, all focused on Olympic level athletes that exist on a plant-based diet, strictly a plant-based diet. There's more protein in plants than there are in meat. In fact, no one on the planet is deficient in protein. That's a myth that you're going to miss out. You're actually probably going to get more protein when you eat more plants. I would, love your family and tell them thanks for your concern, but I'm okay. And you just load up your plate as full as you can. Eat more and more than you're used to eating now that you're eating less meat. Because that's one thing I tell all new vegetarians and vegans is you're gonna have to eat a lot more to fill your body and to fuel your body. So load it up. Don't be scared.
Yes, Wynoami. This transformation in me, even though it's small, happened when I was in the meditation camp myself. It's a 10 days retreat, and the only food they serve is pure vegetarian, but really, really delicious meals. For 10 whole days. Have a breakfast early in the morning, and then lunch around 11 o'clock, and they pretty much won't give you anything the whole day. For the new meditators, they give a healthy snack, pieces of fruits, hot tea without caffeine, like lemon tea, sort of towards the evening. And after I was eating that for whole 9-10 days, not in my first meditation, in my second meditation, for the very first time in my life, one day they gave us a banana, and I'm sure they try to give us only organic good stuff. But when I opened the banana and was trying to eat it, I realized that the banana was not ripened naturally, and it was such a strong feeling that I knew it right off the bat. And it never happens to me, the self-awareness. They say, I don't want to make sad all the male listeners, but I have always felt that guys' self-awareness is usually lower than females. That's what I felt. And given that my personal experience was even lower, in terms of self-awareness, I would know stuff from books. I would know things that I need to know that required memorizing, but I've never felt good about my own self-awareness. But that particular day, realizing that what I'm eating, I knew right off the bat that it was not ripened properly. Maybe there was, I could smell some form of drugs influence ripening processes, and I was really impressed. And I knew right off the bat something was going right. It could be all those meditation and also about the diet, and immediately I thought that's the right move.
Wow, that's really powerful. That reminds me of something, just if I can share. My daughter, when she was, so she had only tried meat maybe once or twice before we switched to a plant-based diet. I've raised her on a plant-based diet ever since. And first of all, I'll just tell everyone that at every doctor's appointment, she is off the charts on her growth. She is in the 99th percentile, which means she is taller than most kids her age, and her blood work is always perfect, and she's incredibly vibrant and strong and energized on a plant-based diet since she was about a year old. But now, whenever we make something in the house that's like a mock meat, right? Because every now and again, even though I'm fully plant-based, every now and again I still want a burger that tastes like a burger. I don't want to eat meat, but I want something because I lived on it all my life, right? So eventually there will come a day when I can give that up too. But for now, every now and again, that's what I like. And when we cook something like that in the house, she hates it. She thinks it smells so bad. She has no interest in trying it. In fact, my mother cooked turkey in the house recently for her dogs, and she was disgusted by it. She couldn't even stay in the room. And I thought that was so fascinating. Go ahead.
I think that's amazing. I wanted to connect one fact that I thought was really, really important here. Is I heard from I think a sage from India, and it connects true to me. Have you noticed that if we give meat to cow, I've grown with domestic animals when I was a kid, because in Nepal is farm. There are a lot of the society is still could be rural at times, right? We could give meat to cows or all those animals who eat only a plant. We could give meat products. They would never eat it because they have that self-awareness, right? But for us human beings, I think sometimes when we lose that self-awareness, that's when I believe the problems start happening. And it's so great that Yait, I'm pronouncing it wrong again, but or the lovely daughter, she has already built that self-awareness, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
How
Yeah, it makes total sense to her, and it does to me too, and it is to you now too. When you wait, it's a sort of awakening. You're absolutely right. It is self-awareness. When maybe our ancestors needed to kill an animal to survive, the cold winter, or in order to have the skins so that they could stay warm, and so they would eat the meat to honor the animal so that it wouldn't go to waste. But looking at the modern world, our ancestors did not have supermarkets. They did not eat meat every single day or 3 times a day. It was not possible.
Yeah.
In fact, it wasn't even possible 60 years ago to do that. So it only just became possible just 60, 70 years ago to do that in the modern world. And yet, the dissociation between what it means to take the life, that there's no honor anymore in killing animals, that it's actually become a really horrific industry and process, and it's actually damaging the planet in incredibly enormous rates, and it's just not necessary. That's really comes down to me. I don't want to shame anyone or pressure anyone, but it's not necessary. Your body doesn't need it to thrive and survive. In fact, it thrives better without it. And so with the planet. So maybe if we could all just do a lot less of it.
Sure. Yeah. Again, we're just conversing, but if we could really build that conscious self, and if we are really self-aware, I think so many of unwanted things we would never do. Right. I think sometimes with this modern world, and the world really focused on outside. We're looking at the world for our internal solutions.
Yes.
Looking outside instead of getting inside. We create so many unnecessary problems. I've started noticing it on my life, not in a big scale, but in a minute scale, and I get very happy realizing that things are moving in the right direction for me, at least.
Yes.
That's it. Wynoami, I've been loving this conversation with you. We have to wrap it up in like 5-10 more minutes. I want to ask you this. Would you do anything differently then if you have to go back in time like 10-15 years, now that you know so many things, right? For some of our young listeners, do you recommend them to follow the right path right away, or they just find it for themselves, leave it to find it for themselves? What did you do differently in basics, I guess, if you had that ability to travel back in time?
Yeah, I love this question. It brings up so many thoughts and feelings. One being that time travel doesn't exist for good reason, and everyone is on their path and is discovering what they need to discover in perfect timing, and that there are no mistakes, that everything is laid out for you perfectly. That being said, if I had the ability to go back, or if I could visit myself 10 years ago, I would tell her to save more of her money. And I would tell her to
right.
And I would tell her to listen to her intuition. And I would tell her to make friends with more women who are much older than her. Women who maybe have grown children, even, and to build stronger ties to communities of women who are living all different segments of their life. And to speak to the young listeners, I would just say to them, there are no gurus. Don't follow any gurus. There's no one person has all the answers. And if anyone tells you that you're doing it wrong and that you need to change what you're doing, turn around and run in the other direction, because there is wisdom that lives inside of you, and it is guidance that you can trust. It is guidance that is consistent and reliable. And if you can be still enough to tune into where that guidance lives in you, it will never steer you wrong. And no one can tell you that you're doing it wrong or going in the wrong direction when you're listening to that still small voice in your body. Your body knows the truth. Your mind is not reliable. Do not rely on your thinking mind. Your mind is good for measuring distances and being able to tell if that chair is stable enough to hold your weight, or knowing when it's time to go to sleep and wake up and when it's time to eat. Your mind is good for that, but it is not good for making decisions. It's not good for choosing what's right for you or correct for you. It isn't good at looking out at the world to see who people are. You're a spiritual being, and your body is your vehicle, and it knows the truth. If you check in with what you're feeling in the sensations of your body, you know when you're on the right track, when you get those tingles, those goosebumps. You know when you're not meant to be in this room, when you feel anxiety or nervousness. You know when you're not listening to yourself, when you're doubting or judging. And I would also say that you never know what another person is going through. You have no idea what another person is dealing with. So do not make the mistake of making assumptions about what a person is doing, who they are. Don't ever decide that you know who a person is 100%, because there is something going on inside of them, same as you, that is invisible, and it is their right path. And just know that you don't need to be in abusive relationships, and definitely step out of toxic relationships, but try to do it with compassion and love for the other, because there's just no telling how much pain they might be in.
Yep. That's amazing. I'm loving this. Last but not the least, I think you have covered the answer in part of the question that I'm about to present to you. My last question would be, what would be, because it's so true for me myself as well, Wynoami. When I was in my 20s, I was a studious guy when I was a kid, and I thought I really knew what I'm supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the youth, they think that they know what they're supposed to do, work hard, maybe study, and so on and forth. But I really never paid attention to the things that I need to stay away from. Sometimes it's very important to really know what not to do. So if we could eliminate what not to do, whatever we do, I think would be okay. So is there anything that you remember or you urge young listeners to stay away from? And you can add a thing, if you have to choose one thing, if they need to get into, what would they be?
Yeah, okay. One thing something to stay away from. Oh, gosh. This is a big question. Because I could probably go down a little bit of a list, but let me think. I would
our previous guest member Javian. He said he's into music. He said pride, and I connected with it as a guy. Sometimes the ego would be detrimental. Will not listen to people. Sometimes that connected with me as well. So I'm just giving you an example. It could be anything, something literal to something maybe not literal.
The thing that's coming up for me is stay away from overindulging in things that numb your senses.
Awesome.
There's all kinds of wonderful experiences. Listen, I am not going to tell you to not do the fun things. I am not going to tell you not to drink alcohol or not to, dabble in whatever experiments you want to dabble in. A lot of these things are here for our enjoyment and exploration. But I will say that I have pretty much stopped drinking. And it's not because I think alcohol is bad or wrong. It's because I know what it feels like to be desensitized and numbed out to my intuition. And here's the thing, it's your senses, your touch, your smell, your sight, and your sixth sense, your intuition, are very sensitive, and you can really tune in very deeply to them. And some of us have, clairvoyant gifts, so you can even like hear things, coming from another source, or feel things coming from spirit itself that can guide you. Life is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be struggle. It's not supposed to be pain and suffering. While pain and suffering does occur, and conflict, in contrast, is a part of living, duality must exist for existence to be. Suffering and living in suffering is not necessary. Pain can be experienced with pleasure. And when pleasure is, what I mean by pleasure is enjoying your body's senses. You can be in a low energy state and still find pleasure in the sunshine, in the flowers, in the tea, in the comfort of the bed or the pillows. And if you're desensitizing with drugs or alcohol, or even desensitizing with, social media, television, video games, anything that is taking you out of your full body, embodied reality, you miss out on the gifts, the blessings that are right here for you, the quiet knowing, the messages that are coming to you all the time from Source, God, the universe, that lift you up, that support you through this journey of life, that remind you of your beauty and your worthiness and your value. So it's hard. I know it's hard for most to do when you're young and you're free and you're you're making your own money or whatever, but I would encourage them to not overindulge in desensitizing their bodies and their senses with things like this. To get into their own genius, nurture your genius, nurture your passion. I think a lot of people talk about passion and bliss being, the result of following your passion, but what does that actually mean? Many people don't know what their passions are. And I think that goes in tandem with desensitization. If you can start to sensitize more, challenge your body by not, going without alcohol this week or this month, or choosing to turn off the television or whatever it may be, and just sit in stillness, as uncomfortable as it is, some voice will come through to guide you to the next thing. And that voice is your genius. That is your genius. And sometimes it shows up just like, call your friend or read this book. But one thing leads to the next, and before you know it, you're enthused and you're thrilled and you're inspired and you're motivated. That's your genius. Search it out and choose. This is really important. Choose to be only surrounded by the people who nurture and support and encourage you. If there are people in your life that judge you, that criticize you, that are constantly reminding you of your lack or your failures, or who are putting pressure on you to fulfill on something that they want for you, or who are keeping track of your failures or your successes, anything that is, any person in your world that's causing you to doubt or judge yourself, please create some distance, some loving space between you and that person, even if they are your partner, your parent, your child. It does not matter who they are to you. Create that space, and please reach out to the people who inspire you, the people who make you feel better when you're with them or when you're tuning into their message. Even if you think they might not notice or recognize, reach out to them. Just tell them thank you, and see if you can make a connection, and surround yourself with people who see you and recognize you for who you really are, and speak into your genius and encourage you to pursue what matters to you and support you in what makes you happy. Please do surround yourself with those people. That is so important.
Awesome. Wynoami, thank you so much. If you would accept, I would love to invite you in my future episode. This is the first time we've been talking for almost an hour. Usually our podcast is around 30 minutes, and I didn't want it to stop it because I thought the listeners would really enjoy you sharing your personal experiences and opinions. That said, is there anything you want to say at the end?
Yes, first, let me thank you for creating this beautiful space to talk about these very meaningful and important subjects. I feel so blessed and honored to be in this conversation. It has been wonderful. I've had so much fun, and I think you're doing a tremendous service to anyone looking for guidance or support, and it's just beautiful. So thank you for your work in the space. It's been fun, and I would love to come back anytime. Please do send me the invite. I will be here. I would love to. And yes, if I could leave your listeners with an invitation of my own, if you are interested in learning more about my work, please follow me on Instagram at Wynoami_G. That's WYNOAMI_G. And there you will find that I am currently this weekend doing an event that I'm calling the Fire Ritual. It is for any woman who is looking to burn down her limitations. If you're having trouble processing negative emotion, if you're feeling like you want to let go of bad habits or bad thought patterns, this is the event for you. Please go to my Instagram to learn more. We are doing it this Sunday online on a Zoom call, so you can join in wherever you are in the world. Please do check that out. And yes, no, just thank you. It's been great.
Awesome. So if any of you guys missed her Instagram account, you can connect to me directly, message me on my social media or Anchor. I'll try to, if there is a space where I can put the link of her Instagram account, I'm gonna put it on the link as well, so you guys can definitely follow her and be in that positive circle of growth and inner happiness and all those good stuff. Thank you, listeners. Thank you so much for listening to us. For the first time today, I want to give you a question to ponder as well. What did you do differently if you could go back in time 10 years? Feel free to share with us in voice messages or comments. That said, we will see you in another episode. Really grateful for all of you listening to this episode of Reclaiming Happiness with Sandeep Neutron. Thank you.